The Giuliani administration's decision to ship off the tower's scrap to recycling yards angered the victims' families and engineers who believed that it needed to be examined further to help explain exactly how the Twin Towers came down. But New York Mayor Mike Bloomberg insisted, quote, "Just looking at a piece of metal doesn't tell you anything." The so-called full investigative team set up by FEMA was not even allowed to enter Ground Zero to collect other potentially critical evidence. This evidence would have been extremely helpful in ascertaining why 14 search and rescue dogs have died, including 8 from cancer due to exposure to toxic rubble at Ground Zero.
I think the towers had to come down from planted explosives. It looks like the only way to me. I mean, I've seen buildings come down in Denver when they do a controlled demolition. They come down exactly as they stand, straight down. The World Trade Centers fell straight down. A plane lands in it, and supposedly, the building automatically crashes from that. I just don't believe it.
One reason for concluding that the 3 buildings were brought down by explosive is the very fact that they did collapse. High-rise steel frame buildings have never, before or after 9/11, been caused to collapse by fire. Even when, as in the Philadelphia fire of 1999 and the Madrid fire of February of this year, the fires were much larger, much hotter, and much longer lasting than any of the fires in the World Trade Center. The second reason is the specific nature of the collapses, each feature of which points to explosives. For example, the buildings collapsed straight down and at virtually free-fall speed, as in controlled demolitions. And then the rubble smoldered for months afterwards.
Given that there was no way that ragtag terrorists could have gotten into places like Building 7, a nerve center of the American intelligence empire, the second biggest CIA building after Langley, Virginia, and brought these buildings down with precisely timed sequences of explosives. Those kinds of controlled demolitions could only have been conducted by experts. And there are very few experts in the world with that kind of capability. So it certainly wasn't 19 crazy Arab kids led by a guy on dialysis in a cave in Afghanistan. So by inside job, what I mean, of course, is that elements of the U.S. military industrial intelligence complex were involved in orchestrating the events of 9/11.
We know something's not right. Let's come forward and tell exactly. Don't take the steel and put it into another country. Don't block a widow from talking. Don't throw out her lawsuit. So somebody is hiding something.
In July of 2001, CBS reported, quote, "In response to inquiries from CBS News over why Attorney General John Ashcroft was traveling exclusively by leased jet aircraft instead of commercial airlines, the Justice Department cited what it called a threat assessment by the FBI and said Ashcroft had been advised to travel only by private jet for the remainder of his term. Others were also forewarned, including Mayor Willie Brown, as well as the author of the Satanic Verses, Salman Rushdie. The Defense Planning Guidance Draft of 1992 was written during the administration of Bush Sr. by Paul Wolfowitz for then Secretary of Defense Dick Cheney. Later, Cheney tried to distance himself from it because of its controversy. Its central strategy was to establish and protect a new order. It mentions preemptive attacks and a plan for military intervention in Iraq as an action necessary to ensure, quote, access to vital raw material, primarily Persian Gulf oil. In September of 2000, the neoconservative think tank, PNAC, or the Project for the New American Century, wrote a document entitled Rebuilding America's Defenses. It is available at newamericancentury.org. It was created with 27 project participants.
Now, the Project for a New American Century, or PNAC as I will refer to them often, is a group of these neoconservatives like Dick Cheney, Donald Rumsfeld, Jeb Bush, Lewis Libby, William Kristol, and several others, influential people who are in our government right now, or influential positions within our media.
Some of the goals set forth in PNAC call for increased defense spending to preserve American geopolitical leadership, to exploit the revolution in military affairs, develop and deploy global missile defense, as well as to fight and win multiple, simultaneous, major theater wars. PNAC cited biological warfare as a politically useful tool. The document states, quote, "Advanced forms of biological warfare that can target specific genotypes may transform biological warfare from the realm of terror to a politically useful tool." It goes on to say, to preserve military preeminence in the coming decades, the Department of Defense must move more aggressively to experiment with new technologies and operational concepts, and seek to exploit the emerging revolution in military affairs. This document also called for a premeditated attack on Iraq to secure regime change. PNAC's RAD also planned for a new Pearl Harbor, such as 9/11. Specifically, it states, quote, "The process of transformation, even if it brings revolutionary change, is likely to be a long one, absent some catastrophic and catalyzing event like a new Pearl Harbor."
They called for a new Pearl Harbor, and that's, again, is their words, not mine. They were basically calling for a huge, massive military buildup in America. They criticized Bill Clinton. This group was formed in 1997 while Clinton was still in office. And they'd actually written a letter to President Clinton. It's on their website, newamericancentury.org. They'd written a letter to President Clinton criticizing him for cutting defense spending and just railing him for leaving us unprotected in their eyes. And they wanted to get Iraq especially. They wanted Saddam Hussein.
Another similar document was the National Security Strategy of the United States of America, or NSS 2002. The document states in Chapter 8, quote, "The events of September 11th, 2001 opened vast, new opportunities." NSS 2002 also cited preemptive strikes, as stated in George Bush's cover letter. Bush said, quote, "As a matter of common sense and self-defense, America will act against such emerging threats before they are fully formed."
They brought out the Patriot Act right after September 11th. This was a huge infringement on our freedoms as Americans. Okay? And since then we have seen a steady chain of usurpations upon our freedoms here in America. The Patriot Act was the first one that sprung forth out of 9/11. We now do not have habeas corpus in America anymore. The government is looking at our emails. They're listening to our phone calls. We have COINTELPRO operations being conducted against activists who are using their First Amendment to petition their government. So one of the main motives, I believe, is to take away our freedoms. Now, why would they want to take away our freedoms? Well, the answer is simple. It's all about globalism. One of the main obstacles, and if not the only obstacle, to the people who would bring in a one-world government is the United States. The idea here is that those who would bring the United States into a world government must take away our freedoms. Most of the world does not have the freedoms that we enjoy in America, or that we're supposed to enjoy, the God-given rights that we possess that are guaranteed to us by our founding documents. In order to merge us with the rest of the world, they've either got to give the rest of the world all the rights we've got, or they've got to take the rights away that we've got so that everything's the same.
Those who scare peace-loving people with phantoms of lost liberty, my message is this: your tactics only aid terrorists, for they erode our national unity and diminish our resolve. charges of kangaroo courts and shredding the Constitution give